Do the Royals still need to add to their bullpen in free agency? We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, some co-hosting, and a little bit of producing as well. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Now, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, and you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. If you've been watching us over the first couple days of this week, we have had a big emphasis on the free agent pool, what the Royals could be looking for, and who makes the most sense. You know, who is going to fit in that price range for the Royals, because when you are a small market bunch, it's not as easy as just picking and choosing who you want, because that makes sense for your lineup. A lot of it's going to come down to that player's desires, how much money is going to be involved, what type of role they would have on the team. And that's why, you know, when you're going through the top guys in free agency, you can cross a lot of them off the list. But we had a couple of options going back to Monday about outfield targets. In yesterday's episode, we talked about the leadoff position, where I think the Royals might go for that, whether it be trade or free agency. And for today, I thought it would be a good time to segue into pitching, because even though I expressed that pitching is not going to be the focal point like it was last season, it's still going to be an area that the Royals will at least look to address. Because you have to understand, and I'm sure JJ Picollo and company already have, that if you expect Seth Lugo to throw 200-plus innings again and have a 3.00 ERA, and Michael Wacha, if he returns, to throw the second most innings of his big league career at the age of 33, 34, then I think that's just, you know, malpractice. I think that's not approaching it the right way. You have to approach it like you can handle the regression. Like that regression from Lugo or that regression from Cole Reagans is not going to break your rotation. And I think for this bullpen's sake, you definitely have to approach it in a different light. You have to go after different guys that you did last year. I think last year, the emphasis for that bullpen was we had to get guys in here that are seasoned. We know what they're going to give us, but they're going to throw strikes, right? Raiding the zone was the first, course of action in finding relief pitchers that made sense for the Royals last year, with that being Will Smith, with that being Chris Stratton, with that being Nick Anderson. They wanted to load up that bullpen with guys that could throw strikes, and had proven not just over the course of their career, but more importantly last year, for good teams, they could handle, a significant workload, that they could lock down games and, bridge the gap to the ninth inning guy, which at the time was supposed to be Will Smith. Then it ended up being James MacArthur. Neither of those guys were able to keep that job by the end of the year, because the Royals acquired Lucas Erceg, and Erceg's going to be back. And now the matter becomes, how do you bridge the gap to Lucas Erceg? Well, I decided to make a little bit of a list at who's going to make sense for the bullpen. And I think in tomorrow's episode, we're going to be looking at starting pitching, because I believe the Royals need one more swing guy. I think they need a sixth starter for that rotation. We also can look at some options if Michael Wacha decides to go elsewhere, but that'll be coming up in tomorrow's episode. For tonight's episode, I have a list of guys that I think could make sense and, of course, would be affordable for the Royals. And really, bullpen arms are affordable for everybody. Nobody can scream poor when it comes to bullpen arms, because nobody is that expensive. You might have to give a multiple-year deal to somebody, but of the bunch that's out there, I don't see multiple year deals for really any of these guys. There might be, somebody like a Tanner Scott who could get a multiple year deal. But overall, there's a lot of guys here that, in my opinion, are near the later stages of their career, and they're only going to get a 1 year deal. So I've got a list of 5 guys here that I think could make a lot of sense and would absolutely be affordable. I do want to say before we dive in, not everybody here has electric numbers. And I thought that it'd be smart not to just pick the best 5 options in free agency, because what we know right now is the Royals have a ninth inning guy. I believe they've got a setup guy in Chris Bubich. And then Matt Quatrero also said at the end of the season press conference that Hunter Harvey would be an 8th and 9th inning guy as well. So there's 3 guys right there that can get you the final 6 outs of the game. This is more so going to be about the 6th and 7th inning. So I'm ruling out guys like Tanner Scott, of course. I'm ruling out Kenley Jansen. I'm ruling out, guys like Carlos Estevez, in my opinion, because he was a back end guy for the Angels. But I'm not going to completely say it's impossible. So the number 1 guy I have on my list is Paul Sewald. Paul Sewald was a very important piece for the Diamondbacks in their run in 2023. Came over from Seattle, had great numbers for Seattle, had great numbers for Arizona, and then in 2024 just took a step back. The numbers are not phenomenal. He's 34. He's just north of 34 years old, so he's going to be within that price range. But I look at it and I say, Paul Sewald doesn't need to come in to be the 9th inning guy, because he was the closer for Arizona going into 2024. It didn't all work out. There's a chance he's at the end of his career, and you're not going to get that 2023 version again. But I like the funky angle that he throws from. If you gave him a 6th or a 7th inning role, I think it's very John Schreiber-esque. And I do think the upside could still be there. And I think it just gives you a little bit of an upgrade in that bullpen. A lot of it comes down to, can he recreate what he did in 2023? And that's the unknown of bullpen arms. It's unfortunately similar to the Will Smith situation. Will Smith wasn't terrible for Texas, but he did lose his closer's job once Jose Leclerc came back and he started closing out games in the postseason. So I do get that feel, but I think Paul Sewald's stuff is better at this point in his career than Will Smith. Will Smith was very much a soft tosser, didn't have the put-away pitch, and I still think Paul Sewald could have that put-away pitch. The next guy on my list is a guy the Royals just saw, and this, to me, would be a home run type of acquisition through free agency, and that would be Tommy Kahnle. Tommy Kahnle has been a Yankee for a long time. The Royals remember him in his time in Chicago. He's a flamethrower. He's got good stuff, and I think targeting guys that throw hard is not a bad idea for the Royals, because they did that with Lucas Erceg, and it worked out. Tommy Kahnle is still 35, and he throws pretty hard. And he's got the swing and miss stuff. He's got the postseason experience, and the Royals just got, put away by him in the ALDS. So he's somebody out there that I think would be in the price range of around, let's say 8 to 9 million. That on a 1 year deal is absolutely doable, in my opinion. So I'm going to put Tommy Kahnle there as a number 2 option. And these are not ranked. I'm just putting 5 guys there. I had a little sheet that I wrote down today of guys that make a lot of sense. The third guy, I think because of the local ties I really like, is Ryan Stanek. Wanted the Royals to go after Ryan Stanek. He's, of course, in New York with the Mets right now. Another flamethrower, another guy that's going to be affordable and can get you the swing and miss. He was not as great for Seattle to begin the year, and then went over to the Mets, and he's still pitching in the back end of their bullpen in meaningful games. You have to buy stock in that, in my opinion, because those are guys that are trusted to get outs in the postseason. So you got the local ties. Ryan Stanek actually went to my rival high school, different time periods, of course. But Ryan Stanek was a guy that went to, Blue Valley. He then went on to pitch at Arkansas. Royals saw him a lot when he was in Tampa Bay. He's somebody that I still think has enough in the tank, will be affordable, and has that local tie. But I also wonder, if he had that local tie last year and he still was available, why didn't the Royals go after him? Again, one guy can dream here and trying to look at somebody that can upgrade their bullpen a little bit. The fourth guy that I did have on my list, though, this feels like a long shot because he's going to warrant a lot of money for a specific role. It's Kirby Yates. Kirby Yates is somebody that I thought was not going to be as good for Texas. I thought it was a fine move for the Rangers and, trying to replace Aroldis Chapman with him. And it worked out. I mean, he was an all-star. He was phenomenal. ERA sub 2. His whip was sub 1. He had like a 3-point something WAR as a closer. He's going to be expensive, though. But if you were trying to build a bullpen that was really locked down in the back end, like if you want to spend a good amount of money on upgrading this bullpen, having Kirby Yates and Lucas Ursig in the back end of that bullpen, man, that is a group that could really be toward the top half of the American League, maybe even all of baseball, and preventing runs later in games. So Kirby Yates is on my list, but it's more of a pipe dream in my opinion. And I know I'm going against sort of the rules I already set for myself of I want it to be realistic. I don't see Kirby Yates as being completely unrealistic because he's almost 40 years old and he's coming off a great season. Maybe you could give him a 2-year deal if that would be a little bit enticing. But I do wonder if the Royals are even looking at any closer out there because they've already got a guy and also Hunter Harvey, who they like throwing in the ninth inning at times to close out games. That's not going to sit well with a lot of people listening, but I think Matt Quatrero likes the idea of having both Lucas Ursig and Hunter Harvey at closing out games for Kansas City. And then the last guy that I had here on my list is, or would be, a little bit of a homecoming. Jorge Lopez. Jorge Lopez was infamous this year for throwing his glove into the stands and then incorrectly being, labeled as the worst teammate or playing on the worst team in the world, though I thought it was a bit of a language barrier there where he meant to say I'm the worst teammate in the world, and they took it as I'm on the worst team in the world in the Mets, and they cut him shortly after that. But he picked it up well in pitching for the Cubs after the Mets had let him go. So he's another guy that has ties. The Royals always liked him when he was here. And I think the stuff is somewhat good enough. He would pencil in fine as a 6th inning guy, as a 7th inning guy. And I believe the stuff can still play. It's much better than when his time was here in Kansas City. And he's just, about to be 32 years old. Nice 1-year deal, probably in the ballpark of $3 to $5 million. I would like that deal with Jorge Lopez. So he's another guy that does make sense to me. He's got the ties to Kansas City, and I think the Royals would be looking more so for a hard thrower, a guy that can get the swing and miss, than a soft tossing lefty or just another lefty for this bullpen because they already got a lot of them. Okay, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, who's going to be the AL Central favorite come February? We'll give you our very early prediction next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our title sponsor in FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Now, if you've watched me long enough at this point, I try to take what everybody else is saying and give you some solid bets to put money down on, but I missed with Garrett Cole. I can't remember if I hit on the Francisco Lindor bet that I had, but sometimes I'm not giving you the best advice. But I'll give you another one for the heck of it. I do think that somebody like Juan Soto has been the best hitter for the Yankees in the postseason. I'll take the over on hit total going into Game 3 in Cleveland between the Yankees and the Guardians. That hopefully will get me back on the right track. It's going to be a long time from now, and there's going to be some people listening that don't understand why I'm doing this type of segment, because how can we accurately assess a preseason favorite when the season's still going on and we have no idea what those teams are going to look like come February? I do understand that, but I also am going off a hunch of what I think is going to happen, who I think is going to be spending money, who I think is going to be sitting back. And then come February, I might be able to look back at this episode and maybe, feel good about my prediction, because I don't get many right, especially when it comes to this division. We did an AL Central preview right before opening day. I'm sure a lot of you watched that if you've been listening for that long. We all had the Twins winning. And then the only thing we got right though it was a bit of a coward take at it, was saying, well, second, third, and fourth are all going to be interchangeable. We really don't know who it's going to be. That ended up happening, but we didn't really pick a second, third, and fourth place team. We just said first place is going to be the Twins. All felt confident in that. And then the White Sox were going to be last. But now I do think it's going to be different going into 2025. And actually, it's interesting with the White Sox. Jerry Reisendorf now looking into maybe selling the team. So the White Sox could be a lot better, though it's not hard to be much better than losing 120 plus games. And that's a team that is still going to be toward the bottom if they improve by 20 games or so. I mean, they improve by 20 games, they still lose 100. So the White Sox are going to be at the bottom of this division. You can already rule them out as being a contender in this spot. As for the rest of the teams, I think that we're going to see a different spin than what we saw this past year. I don't think we are going to see Cleveland tear off in the way that they did. I wouldn't be shocked if that's Detroit next year. I would not be surprised if Detroit is that Cleveland team that has that early 10-game winning streak and they're 20 games over 500, and they're a team that a lot of people are chasing. Because I'm going off of what happens typically in free agency or what has happened over the last 5 years or so. The Royals do have a foundation. They are coming off a fantastic season. They are going to spend money. They are going to be a team that's expected to get to the postseason. But I don't know if I see 3 teams getting to the postseason again next year. Not from the AL Central. I think 2 do, obviously, because I think the division winner will get that first round bye, in my opinion. And then I do think the second team will be a top wild card, if not the second wild card team again, because I think the second place team in the AL East will be in that spot again. But I think at this point in time, what I expect is going to happen is Detroit is going to spend money now. Detroit tried to spend money last offseason. They brought in Mark Canha. They brought in Kenta Maeda. They had a couple of pieces to battle out in the bullpen. Jack Flaherty came in, of course. The Tigers did try a little bit. But now after this type of season, knowing what their bullpen was like, knowing if they can get a full season of health from Riley Green and Kerry Carpenter and Parker Meadows, that's a group that has 90 to 95 win potential. And as things stand right now, though it's going to be an unpopular take on this podcast, I think the Tigers are going to be the favorite going into spring training because I think the Tigers are going to make a splash move and probably more so in the pitching market. I think they want to pair somebody with Tarek Skubal. And if the Tigers get a legitimate number 2 behind Skubal, and then you've got Casey Mize back there that can be the number 3, that's a rotation that can be really scary come October because that bullpen, pretty much everybody's returning from that bullpen. Jackson Jobe, another young prospect, might be able to hop into that rotation. This offense is much better without Javi Baez. I don't think what they did in October was a fluke. I don't think what they did in September was a fluke. In my opinion, with Detroit was a team that was never healthy. And then when they finally got healthy, that's what they can look like. At their best, now we have to acknowledge that was the best version that they could look like. It was also being the best team in baseball for the better part of a month and a half. So I think Detroit is a team that is supposed to be first. Then it comes down to, do the Royals or Cleveland spend more money? And not that spending money is everything, but I have to wonder if Cleveland, though they're the last team standing in the American League Central or for the American League Central in the postseason, I have to wonder if that bullpen can do the same thing next year. I don't know if the Guardians can go through another season getting basically nothing from their rotation. You know, Tanner Bybee being the number 1 in that staff, it's fine when the bullpen is that good, but it also means the bullpen has to be the number 1 bullpen in baseball. This offense has great pieces. Jose Ramirez, right? Steven Kwan. You have young middle infielders like a Brian Rocchio who's up for a Gold Glove. Andres Jimenez has struggled. Josh Naylor struggled in the back half of the schedule. But then you've also got Jean-Kency Noel. They've got young, controllable pieces. That's what's always been great about Cleveland, and you never rule them out. They could win this division next year. But I think Detroit, based on the betting odds, I'll go them number 1. I think Minnesota is a team that is going to finish 4th again. I'm not sure they're going to commit a lot of money going into this offseason. I do wonder what they're going to do with Carlos Correa, if they'll hang on to him, or, because, a GM is now out, that the first move will be kind of trying to free up some money, get some young talent in. But it was a disaster for Minnesota, a disastrous collapse that they had, and they're going to be losing some pieces going into October. And there's a team that has never really proven they're going to spend a significant amount of money. A lot of it, too, is health, though, and they're a team that is always banged up. So right now, I think that the odds, and this is not always my take, this is what I think those betting apps are going to have. It's what I think FanDuel is going to have for division favorites. And so fourth, I'll go Minnesota. And then I expect the Royals to spend more money than Cleveland. Cleveland almost never spends money. They rely on player development and the bullpen being really, really good. And it comes down to, do you feel like Cleveland is going to be a number one bullpen again? Do you feel like Cleveland is going to get some of these guys that are not as well known thrive in the lineup? That all is really going to be up in the air, because Cleveland's a hard team to put your finger on. They are a very talented bunch, hence why they're still playing. But I do wonder if this team can repeat what they did last year. And right now, my gut tells me no, because I do think that sometimes it's just that you get lucky in certain spots. In Cleveland, from the very beginning of the year, they were red hot. I mean, they had that division under wraps for a long time. The Royals tied them at the top, and then they went on tear when the Royals started to crumble late. But I do think that the betting apps are going to put the Tigers and Royals 1 and 2. Then I think it'll be Cleveland. Then I think it'll be Minnesota. Then I think it will be the White Sox. Now, as much as I said that I don't see 3 teams getting in from the Central again, I think that same rule of the second, third, and fourth place teams being interchangeable, I think that applies again. Like, if the Royals finish in second again, it might be a game over Cleveland. And I also think the Royals are a team that can win near 90 games. And so if the Tigers win 92, let's say, I could see the Royals winning 90. I could see Cleveland winning 89 and Minnesota winning anywhere from 86 to 87, and the White Sox bottoming out. That's just the state of the American League Central right now. It's very competitive. Lots of great managers, lots of great staffs. And it's going to come down, in my opinion, to who's going to spend a lot of money to bolster their team and build off what they did. I got more confidence right now. Can always change, of course, and I expect it to change. But I think Detroit and Kansas City are going to spend more money than Cleveland and Minnesota. But if there's a Cleveland or Minnesota fan listening and they don't like what I just said, prove me wrong. I would love to know why Minnesota or Cleveland would be spending more money than the Royals or the Tigers, because I think the Royals and the Tigers know they need to spend money to get that number 1 and number 2 spot in the American League Central. We'll take our final break of the show. When we come back, I got a couple of guys that I think are really going to break out for Kansas City in 2025. I'll tell you who next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our second sponsor in Gametime. Though the season is over, you can always look ahead to next season, or maybe you're focused on football now. But if you're focused on football and you want to go to one of the games, I'll be out in San Francisco this weekend for the Chiefs and the 49ers. Buy your tickets over at Gametime, whether it be for college, whether it be for NFL. Maybe you're looking ahead to college basketball. If you're a KU, K-State, or Missouri fan here locally, buy your tickets over at Gametime. They've got the best deals over there, cheapest deals. They'll show you that. They'll show you the hottest deals, the ones that are really selling quickly. And if you have your notifications on, they'll tell you when your favorite band's in town or things that you're interested in. That way you don't miss out on buying those tickets. I love using the app. Pretty much daily, I'm checking to see what's coming up, what those tickets may be. It's a lot of fun to use. I always stick with Gametime when buying tickets. So download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Also want to give a shout out to PrizePicks. And with PrizePicks, we know that it's one of our favorite sponsors to give some love to here on the show, because you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's also the best way to get in on the action in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. it is guaranteed. And PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, where each Tuesday PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value to your lineups. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup over at PrizePicks. It's still, as I said, for the second segment, it's going to apply here to the third segment. It's still very early to be giving our way too early predictions, guys we think that are going to break out, teams that we think are going to be good, teams that we think are going to be bad. And it's funny to do so when there's a playoff game going on right now as I'm recording this podcast between the Dodgers and the Mets. But still, I'm going to put my feet to the fire here and make some predictions. I got 3 players here that I think are going to have a breakout season for the Royals. And you can define breakout however you want to. My criteria here is going to be, for a position player being a top 5 player on the roster. That's going to be my breakout candidate. And I'm not going to pick guys like Vinny, of course. I'm not going to pick even somebody like a Brady Singer type. No, I'll leave him out because I consider Brady Singer to have just had a breakout season. I think Vinny just had a breakout season, in my opinion. So I'll leave those guys off the list here. Number 1 is pretty easy for me, and I think it all is going to circle back to health. I believe Michael Massey will be the number 1 breakout player for the Royals in 2025. If he was healthy coming out of spring training, I think he already would have been a top 5 player for the 2024 squad. And I'm trying not to feed into the recency bias of him playing well in the postseason, him hitting leadoff, him being great against Baltimore, him having probably the biggest clutch hit for the Royals in the ALDS, of course, Game 3 at Kauffman Stadium. But I just think everything is going to come together if he stays healthy in 2025. You're talking about a second baseman that has the glove. He is a good defender. Yeah, he had an occasional gaffe from time to time, but he's a good defender. He's an above-average defender at second base. He's got that connection with Bobby Witt Jr. I also think he's one of the few second basemen that can run into 20 to 25 home runs when healthy. If he plays 150 games next year, I could almost guarantee that he gets closer to 25 home runs than, let's say, a guy like MJ could. Or he might be neck and neck with somebody like Vinny Pasquantino. I'm not sure that Vinny Pasquantino could finish with 25 home runs next year. Michael Massey just feels like he runs into a lot for a second baseman. But it all can come together next year. A better approach. He feels more comfortable up there now. He's got pop that we've all seen. He's got the postseason success now. I think he's primed to have a breakout next year, assuming he can stay healthy. And that's a big if, because that happened 3 different times in this year with dealing with the back injury where it sidelined him. And when he was healthy, the Royals won a lot of games. I think there was a great stat before he went on the injured list for a second time that the Royals were 10-plus games over 500 when Michael Massey had played. So I think he is somebody that does move the needle for this offense. I would hope he can hit probably around 6th in this lineup rather than lead off, because I think it would give this lineup a lot more depth than we're all accustomed to. The second breakout guy, I'm going to go on the pitching route here. I do believe that a guy like Alec Marsh can take a big step forward next year. I was pleasantly surprised by what we saw from Alec Marsh from 2023 to 2024. But now I think in the number 5 role again, I think having a season-long, output in the major leagues, right? He did get demoted in August, I believe it was, and had to redefine his role a little bit. But he also showed in Omaha that he was too good for AAA hitting. So I think he is somebody, now that he has seen it, he has seen success at the big league level. Not better than most in that rotation, but he's seen it. He knows how to prepare for the big leagues. He knows how to attack certain hitters. I think there is something in the tank to give you what Brady Singer did this year. If the Royals trade Brady Singer, I would envision Alec Marsh taking the role of Brady Singer, where he can give you 30 starts. His ERA can be a 3.7, something like that. And that would be a big step forward. I do believe that he can be that breakout guy and be maybe one of the better strikeout pitchers in that rotation, because I think the stuff is there. I really still am high on Alec Marsh. If they want to move into the bullpen in more of a hybrid role, I wouldn't hate it. But if they do trade Brady Singer, I would expect Alec Marsh to be penciled in as that number 4 guy because he was just the number 5 guy for the majority of the year this past year, and then got demoted once Michael Lorenzen came in. And sneak peek, we might be talking about Michael Lorenzen a little bit tomorrow in our episode. And then the third breakout guy that I am going to have here, I'll pick a bullpen guy because I wanted to have somebody from the lineup, somebody from the rotation, somebody in the bullpen. This one is going to be the most controversial, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think Hunter Harvey has a little bit of a breakout. I think a lot of Hunter Harvey's struggles this past year with the Royals was that he wasn't healthy. I think he wasn't healthy and he was overused in Washington. Now he has a full off season to get right. He's going to have a fresh arm coming into spring training, and the Royals spoke highly of him at the end of the season press conference. To hear that they still think Hunter Harvey's an 8th or a 9th inning guy, that's great to hear. That it's not, well, we're not really going to talk about Hunter Harvey, or we're, not really acknowledging him right now. He's somebody that I think if Lucas Ursig is not able to close it out, he will be the guy to close it out in the 9th. He might be the James MacArthur in a more so of a role sense here, not so much of production. But I think where he could pitch in the 7th, he could pitch in the 8th, or he could pitch in the 9th. And I think the stuff is there. I think the stuff is good enough to have a breakout type of season as a setup guy and probably even close out a handful of games for the Royals in 2025. But he'll be my bullpen pick for a breakout candidate this coming year for the Royals. Both way too early predictions for our second and third segment today, but hope you had some fun with it. And if you got some predictions that you want to let us know about, leave them in the YouTube comment page below on this episode. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson, and you can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, find Locked On MLB as Baseball Guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every aspect of the playoff picture. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about who the Royals could add to their starting rotation if they lose Michael Wacha, or even if they retain Michael Wacha. We'll talk about that next in tomorrow's edition of Locked On Royals. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.